What's going on, folks? And we're back, and joining me is Kenn Blanchard. And so when I started doing what I did, my medium exchange was YouTube. That was the kind of the platform that I utilized the most to kind of get out my message. What was your medium of exchange? Like, what did you use? What was your platform, your main platform that you used whenever you started doing your advocacy?
I always wanted to be in radio. So when podcasting came out around 2007 and I heard it and was able to do it in 2009, that was it. I was able to broadcast down in the basement, and I've been having fun ever since.
Yeah.
I've been scared of video up until probably yesterday.
I mean, I don't blame you. And I remember when I started, I didn't even put myself into videos. I kind of started, all you saw was my hands, and I had these little hobbit hands. So, I mean, it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world to look at. But, you know, I'll be there just kind of touching a gun and stuff like that. And then I realized once I started kind of doing the more political commentary around the Second Amendment, I realized that's when. Huh? Say it again?
He was crushing it then, though.
Yeah, I guess for the most part.
Nobody did it like that, though. I was like, yeah. I'm like yelling from the television screen. I'm like, yeah, that dude is doing it. My wife's like, what are you talking about? I was like, it's a brother. He's doing it. She's like, you know him? I was like, no, not really. It's okay.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you know, in many ways, I kind of look at it just kind of almost being in the right place at the right time. It was YouTube had already it was established, but it's nowhere near. It was nowhere near where it is now. And so for me, I kind of just got fed up with all of the political anti-gun talk. And one day I was like, you know what? I got to say something. I just have to. It's something that became a passion of mine. So I felt like I needed to cut the camera on and just start talking. And that was the first time I really started showing myself in front of the camera. And so from there, it just kind of, and then once I started doing that, the videos just started taking off. And I didn't even realize how much I'd learned during the time period of me kind of chasing that rabbit down the rabbit hole. And it just all just came spewing out.
Yeah, I remember the first time I contacted you, I was like trying to tell you, keep on going.
Yeah.
And how in the heck did you do that? I mean, I was like, what kind of equipment do you have? I was all technical. I was just geeking out on that stuff.
Yeah.
And but it was all good.
The interesting thing about it is I didn't even, for me, like I don't have a creative arts background. I don't have a photography or videography background. A lot of it really was, I owe so much to YouTube, it's unreal in many ways, because I spent a lot of time just learning how to do, figuring out which camera to use, things of that nature. I use YouTube for that in many ways, and the internet in general, and talking to people and things of that nature. But for the most part, a lot of my education came by way of YouTube. And so it just kind of took on a life of its own. And before I knew it, it was kind of like, okay, that video just hit 400,000. That's weird.
Yeah.
And you know, and the thing that was scary was when I realized I really, really legitimately had an audience, you know, and that's when the pressure kicked in. But I mean, you've had an entrenched audience for years yourself. And so in doing what you do, what do you see generally as the biggest issues that a lot of people have in terms of the gun rights issue?
When they bring it home. When we're at the NRA meeting, everybody's on the same page. When we're at the gun show, we're on the same page. When we're at the range, same page. But when you go home, or you go to the PTA meeting, or you go to your family reunion, you get beat up there. And then that's when the kick-in part of me was like, okay, I don't have a range that I could go to. I live outside of the nation's capital, not the most gun-friendly place in the world. But as a pastor, as a preacher, I know the heart of people. So I thought I could be the Friar Tuck of this thing. I could be the one who could actually pep you up after the world done beat you down.
Yeah.
So my podcast, for the most part, has been a cheerleading thing. I'm the one who's going to tell you it's okay. And if you want to talk to your parents or your mom or your daughter or your husband, this is how you want to do it. The tone has to be right. And I kind of went at it a whole different route, and that's allowed me to stay there for 9 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One thing I can vouch for is your consistency, because a lot of people aren't consistent. A lot of people kind of flame up a little bit and then it just kind of retard out. But now, with your background in being a preacher, do you think that helps you in a lot of ways?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And sometimes I thought, I get beat up a lot by other ministers. I mean, too, because we have like theological fights. They'll say, well, how can you be preaching this violence? And I'm thinking, hold the phone. First thing, gun do not equal violence.
Yeah.
It's the heart of man that Jesus was trying to change. And then they go, oh, okay. And before they know it, I done pulled them into the whole argument.
Yeah.
And then they got to walk away because I done messed them up.
Yeah.
And then later they got to go say, okay, well, how about if I just get lessons and maybe not preach to my congregation? I was like, that's called hypocrisy.
That's so true. It's, it's interesting and it's unfortunate, again, Charleston, I always mess it up. The shooting that happened in the church.
Yes,
where
Charleston.
Yeah. And
the Booth dude.
And it's hard. Like a part of me really wanted to lash out, and not at the people you think I would lash out at. I in many ways wanted to lash out at the church, because if there was ever a situation where somebody else having a gun would have been incredibly effective, it would have been in that church.
Yeah.
And it's not lashing. It's not me wanting to lash out in anger, but more so pain. Because it's something that shouldn't have happened, and something that could have been not necessarily preventable, but stoppable.
Yeah, we got a culture in the black church that amplifies that whole thing. That guns are negative, that nobody should have one except for the police and the military, that Jesus wouldn't approve of it. And the fact of it is, we don't get to the real nitty-gritty of it. The whole arms thing, you want the person with the highest moral character to be able to carry a firearm.
Absolutely.
If you go back to the old Chinese flicks where the mouth is moving and the voice don't match, it was those Shaolin monks, priests, the religious people who had the art of the death touch.
Yeah.
I mean, they were the ones who trained the Shaolin monks. So I tell people, when I was pastoring in a really tough church in D.C., I would ask my deacons, I said, well, do we have a problem? Because if the pastor has to come off this pulpit, you know how it's going to go down. And they would just laugh, but they would get the hint, like, handle it before I got to go to it, because I ain't got but one button: protect my flock.
Yeah.
Shepherd, do the protection deal, and that's what I'm based on.
It's also interesting when you look at two situations that happen. You have two situations where somebody brought a gun into a church intending on killing a lot of people. I don't remember the specific name of the church of the other case, but I remember there was one situation where there was a lady there. She was security. She was working security at the church, and she stopped the guy. She shot the guy who came into the church, who basically said, "I want to kill a bunch of Christians." And in that situation, I think the only person that died was that guy.
Yeah.
And then in the alternative, you have this situation here, and it goes to show immediately, like I can't implore anymore the importance of being in a position to defend yourself. Like, and I got into it. No, I don't get into it with her anymore. But with my mother, who's incredibly religious, I remember when I was trying to get her to keep the gun that I was giving her in the house. I remember she was like, "Oh, baby, I don't need it. I got Jesus." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. Jesus gave you a son that'll give you your gun." So,
right?
Yeah. And so now she doesn't fight me anymore. She understands now, and she's accepted that part of it. But there's this false narrative, I think, where people assume that just because you are a Christian or that you espouse some religion that teaches peace, that teaches love, that teaches forgiveness and kindness, that it means that you also must be passive to the point of your own self-destruction.
Yeah, we missed that part. That Jesus, if you just hit Christianity by itself and Judaism, if you hit Christianity, you have a guy who was there on a mission, and he was there to sacrifice his life. So every time somebody tried to step up with the sword, he told them, put it away. And they misinterpret that whole piece. Whenever the centurion, who was my favorite dude in the story, showed up and asked them if he would heal his servant, Jesus didn't say, "Oh, I can't heal you because you're armed," or "I can't heal you because you're a military guy," or "you have been in war." He said, "This was one of the guys with the best faith because you knew the power that I have." We get lost and get confused in what the person's carrying when it's really what's in your heart.
Yeah.
It always has mattered, and it matters both when you're actually engaging and talking about this whole issue. Some people that are in our families shouldn't have firearms, and I mean, we got crazy people
Absolutely.
on both sides,
Yeah.
and they're the first ones who will tell you, but they like to project that on everybody else. Like, I'm not responsible, so you can't be either, and that's where you're wrong. I have to stop you right there.
I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people who were against what I did, and their basis for it was, well, I don't trust myself with a gun, so I know I can't trust you. And I'm like, are you crazy? like don't project your own inadequacies onto me. Like I'm not you. I'm totally I'm a whole different person. If you don't own a gun, don't own it. But we got to take a quick break real quick, and when we come back, we'll talk about some of the books that you have and some of the other things you have going on.
Thanks.